Thank you very much. Hi. I think you already saw what was the numbers in the keynote, right? So I think maybe you are here to understand the more details about the rendering technology that we use now in the UI5. And I would like to explain you why we are just changing this one and what kind of benefits we will bring over the old string-based rendering. So when the topic is open with the string-based rendering, let me explain what is a string-based rendering. Actually, sometimes people don't really understand. Let's assume that this room is an UI5 control, okay? And if you're using a string-based rendering for this room, and if only your Windows is dirty, what UI5 is doing is, it does not clean only your window, it destroys the complete room. It takes it out, and there's a garbage collection. Of course, we have to clean up the garbage, so there's a garbage, there's a problem. And then it will bring up all the room again back in the same position. But if you have good fast workers, maybe it's still okay. You saw the numbers with the 30 frames per second was also not so bad numbers in all the years. And the other problem is there are two stubborn people. It's Mr. Focus and Mrs. Scroll. They want to be in exactly the same position after rendering has happened, right? So to solve such problems, UI5 has solutions already. Write your custom setters. It was we always saying, and we always write the custom setters in our controls. But this increases the maintenance because in the control you would like to adjust your representation only in your renderer. You don't want to know anything about the invalidation and something is changed and you have to update the DOM in your behavior. If you do that, and we did it all the years, and then that we increase the maintenance, right? Because if you forget something, change something in the renderer, then you forget change something in the behavior. So that was happening, and not only that one, this increased the volume of the code, and this will need to be executed, this needs to be downloaded, this needs to be parsed by the engine and executed. This is something that was happening all the years. And now we would like to change this one with a new rendering engine. So a new rendering engine will help us to understand the structure. So what we were doing with the old rendering is we were just using the buffer HTML that you see here, right? This is something, a little button control, a custom button control. We are just saying the right control data and attributes and things like that. But in the new rendering syntax that you will see here on the right-hand side, it has some little, it gives us some idea about the context of the HTML. And this idea that we can use it for diffing the HTML correctly. And we can even use for the skip rendering of the controls that they do not need rendering, like children, for example, right? And you already see that it's also shortened the syntax, right? So, and we didn't come up here with a complete, we could also come up here with complete declarative syntax like JS6 does or the other frameworks are doing. We don't want that because we want you to simply convert your controls to the new syntax. As you can see here, it's quite simple to convert a new one. And this is our purpose here. And you are still in the JavaScript environment, so you can still put your breakpoints on your here, and you are still in the JavaScript and can debug your code. And you write your hook methods that for your base classes, or subclasses. So you are still in the JavaScript environment, so you are not in the string template, and you don't have to learn a new string templating syntax for the other frameworks. All right. So what we see here is, if I can somehow, anyway. So what we see here is now we are just saying an open start tag. We are just saying which tag we would like to open, and it's similar to what you see on the left-hand side. And this we are just giving the control instance, and which we were giving the control data before, and you don't need element data any longer. And what is here interesting is that we don't have to know everything about this attribute, whether it's escape or not. So you can just use the attribute method. So we will take care of the escaping if it is necessary. Because we are using DOM API, actually, we don't even escape it, so browser does it for us. And here, you also see that before the API was not allowing the empty with values, so that's why you always need to check with the if. You don't even need that, because in the DOM API, if the value is empty for the CSS values, you can it is just used to remove it. So if you want to remove it, so it will be just removed from the next rendering. Okay. Open-end API, yes, I agree that this does not sound really good. I'm not so proud with this API. But it's actually good there for a good reason, right? So that we can understand that all the classes that you add before, you append before, is the right point for now to just write in the correct DOM nodes, which is the open tag was the button. So all the classes that you append here and the styles will be appended to the bottom. We know that one. And here also, we also change with write escape method. It's just a text method, and you're just closing it. This is the only simple syntax. We have even script for it that does it for us. Of course, we change almost all controls in our changes to test the compatibility, right? And this is important because it has to run parallel, right? This is very important. What you can say that what if there's a new rendering control, a control is using new rendering engine, is maybe it has a child that is rendering the old string-based rendering, and maybe string-based parent rendering is need to now render a new child. In that case, we need to understand the compatibility, and that's why we have a little flag for it, which is called that you are saying in your renderer, I would like to use the new rendering technology of the UI5. And this actually like this, just the API version 2 flag is set, but then you have to use our new APIs. That's you need to check at the API documentation a little bit. And then you can just close this one. Sometimes people wonder that what happened with the subclasses, and you have to define in the subclasses as well. So you cannot just say the API version flag will not be inherited. Because think about it, so maybe you convert your controls that is in the base, but the subclasses are not converted. That would cause an issue for us. That's why you have in each and every control, if you want to convert, you have to say that I would like to use a new rendering, and you can only use these new APIs. The API version flag is not only for rendering syntax. It has a convention because we are changing the behavior of the control. The controls will not be taken out from the DOM tree any longer. Okay, that's why there's a contract between the API version. It's not only for syntax. Of course, the first most important thing is you have to migrate your renderer syntax to the new one. And you need to be careful with the API documentation. For example, the tag names and attributes must be in their canonical form. What I mean with this, for example, if you are writing a top index, you cannot just write the I as an uppercase then, because this is not a canonical form of this attribute. Or in the button, you cannot just make the B as uppercase. And just a little bit more details that you need to work a little bit with the APIs. You can say that, can't you just make it lowercase? You already know the HTML. Yes, we could do that, but then we could not reach the 60 frames per second. If you want to just execute this again and again, think about it, this API will be called 1,000 times, 10,000 times in the initial rendering. So we cannot just convert to lowercase for you or something. We expect from you to provide a valid HTML. Sometimes I see that two attributes are setting. You maybe assume that the browser accepts the second one, but actually the browser accepts the first one. So that's why don't do such things. If you have such things in your control while converting, be careful. So don't put such things, double attributes. And I sometimes see that the div tag is closed like that. This is not correct, actually. Div is not a void tag, so you cannot close div tag like this. So you have to really open the tag and then close it. So this is the right way. It's a valid XHTML here, what you see, but it's not a valid HTML tag. Okay. One more important thing is about event deregistrations. Because we do not remove your DOM, control DOM from the DOM tree any longer, and if you are registering a new events on after rendering, like some events are not bubbling up to the UI area, right? So you cannot just use on click, for example, like image as a special event like load event, and that it will not bubble up. It is only for image control. So if you are registering these events, custom events with jQuery or with add event listener, and there you will just, if you just in the re-rendering, you will just register it again and again. That's why we expect from you to clean up your event registration on before rendering. And also in the exit is important, because think about, we would like to use every resources in the DOM actually. So let's say you have a navigation, you navigate to the new page, and you then navigate back to the old one, and you destroy, the navigation will destroy the page that exists, but instances will be destroyed, but we can still use the DOM node of that controls. So we will try to recycle them if you just use our new center. So we don't need to create all the rooms again and again. We will just bring it back to here and only update what needs to be updated. That's why we need a little bit careful if you want to say API version. Okay. And there are some details like the focus event. So because the DOM is not removed from the DOM tree any longer, you might not get the focus in event. If your logic somehow related, custom controls are related with focusing, you should be a little bit careful with that one. Because like the focus was on the input, something is invalidated, you need to show the value state of the input down error, and then it will be rendered, but no focus in event. It was coming before with the string-based rendering, so it should be coming, because we were removing it, and the new one was coming, and the focus handler was setting the focus, but the focus is never changed. The DOM node is never removed from the DOM. It is not necessary to fire from browser to new focus in event, right? Because the focus was always there. It is not lost. So in case of you need, I'm just saying. So I would like to talk about the engine a little bit. And give a little bit of time. So initial rendering, we said that what you see here on the what you saw at the keynote, it was not a virtual DOM. We have an all rendering system. The virtual DOM creates a virtual informations in the initial rendering. This is not something we want. We don't want to slow down the initial rendering just because we can update later on. So this is what the virtual DOM is. But we have an abstraction layer. You saw it, right? So if we see that the virtual DOM libraries bring us a lot of power into the framework. We can change our rendering engine. We have a power now. We can even change that Internet Explorer. We can still use string-based rendering, or we can say in that control I use this rendering engine, and for the other one, so we can all free now because our abstraction layer is this new APIs allow this, so we can decide what we want. It's a simplicity, but brings a lot of power. So what is happening here is we just have a little button again, and we have a tooltip is set, and the text control is set. This is the initial rendering. It's a playset. So what is happening is at the beginning we just again concatenate the strings. So it's still string-based in initial because there is no update. The room is first time is building, right? That's why you still use the fastest one as possible. So it is just executing, so I'm not going to explain it. It's just string concatenation with the APIs, and that's it. The interesting is starting to happen when how the re-rendering is happening. And then you maybe wonder how this open start and attribute and closing is helping us. So what we are doing is, when the first line is executed, we just put and you see that this is the output of the DOM, right? What you see here on the right-hand side. Right-hand side. Here is the DOM of the existing, okay? And when this line is executed, we just go and put our cursor here, okay? And then we check if it is really passing to the tag name it's given. Oh, it is passing. It is exactly the same one. And then we also check whether the IDs are also passing, because the control line, we know the ID of the control. And it's also passing, it's exactly the same. And then we get the attributes of the DOM node. Okay? And then we start executing it again. And the tab index, when the tab index, we just check what was the tab index. Oh, we know that the tab index was exactly the same, so we don't have to update the DOM now. Okay? So you say tab index, so the update is happening actually while your renderers are executing. And then the tooltip, now the tooltip was empty. You see on the right top. We passed that one. And classes will not, we just put it into our own internal buffer, and because we will process them on this beautiful open-end API. And now when the open-end comes, we just check the classes in our context, and then we see that the class was exactly the same, right? Was here, and here it was exactly the same. So we don't have to do anything in the DOM. And we also understand the style was exactly the same here, which is given here. Was exactly the same. And then we are done here. But the title was left. So that means the title that wasn't exist here in here, now it needs to be removed from the DOM tree. And this is how we understand this API lets us to understand the whole DOM structure. And that's help us. This helps us, for example, you are now, there's a whiteboard here, there's a window here, then we know that there's a window here, and we know that, oh, window has to be cleaned, the others are not. So this is how the algorithm is working. So we also then continue, then open start, because the tag is not closed yet. It's open. We just put it to the next first child, and then the text is here is exactly the same. So we are just passing, but then we find out the description is now exists. It was not exist before, right? So and then we put that we started to create it because now here the label will be executed, and then we'll start putting the label here, and then we will create, and then later on the bottom we will close. And this is what I wanted to show you. This is how algorithm works. Okay, I would like to show some samples here. Time is running up. So let me show you from what we are doing in the UI5 side now. We are just, at the moment we started to, I need to stop the presentation view. Oops. All right. So what we are doing now in the UI5 side is open UI5, and we are just now, you can see that sub M link control is started to migrate to the new rendering syntax. Okay, and this is, I would like to show you how we are doing it now in the framework side. And you will also, in your custom controls, you can also do that. You should do that. So you can see that all the custom setters that are related with the DOM is all deleted. I mean, look at this code here, almost 200 lines of code. We don't need them any longer because we'll update it anyway. These lines here, I mean, let's have a look, one of them here, the simple one. Set wrapping was only setting this up, this toggling the classes, and this is what we will do when your render is executed, as I showed you before, right? So you don't need these custom setters any longer, DOM-related custom setters any longer. We delete here 200 lines of code. And what you see here is with the link renderer, link renderer is just saying, I have an API version 2. And then it just, as I showed you before, it was writing the tag, and the control data is just merged into the one line. And you can see that add class is converted to class, and this is quite easy. I mean, here the right attribute is also was getting from the outside. Right with escape is interesting here. We don't need to do anything, think about escaping any longer. This is also good from your side. You don't need encoding. You don't need to think about these things. And you can see that, and that's it. And that's it actually. So it's very basic. And I would like to really show you a little snippets that I have prepared for you here. So what you see here is a little in our internal Synaptics system, but we could also do it in the JSPin or somewhere. So what we have here, text controls and link button, and they're in the VBox control. Okay? And within the VBox, only the text control exists. This is what you see here. And now the VBox control is converted to the new rendering. Text control is converted to new rendering, and you saw that the link control is converted to new rendering, but the button is not yet. Okay? So let me just open this in a new tab, and then we just go into a bit live coding. So please remember this one. This was the HBox control. What you see here as a DOM node, is it visible for you? I hope it is. And here, this DOM node, it belongs to the Flexbox. Also, you can also see it. And this belongs to the text control. Here, what you see. And what I will do is you can have a look, text control as let's set the tooltip. And if you look at the tooltip, it does not have a DOM-related API any longer. It's all deleted, cleaned up. And if you just set the tooltip, please keep an eye on this node here, then Chrome will nicely show you what is changed in the DOM node. Okay? So I will just set the tooltip here. Oops. Tooltip. So you can see that. Right? I hope you could see that on the DOM node, right? So you can already see, or we can just clean it up and set the text at the same time. Let's have a look at the text here. Tooltip is empty, and then we can just go and set text, and then we can just say, doesn't matter, new text. So you can see the new text one is updated. The DOM is not, only that part is updated, and we just removed the tooltip from the DOM node. And we didn't touch the others at all. So if we add a new item to the control, right? So if in the UI5 case, if you want to add a new chair in the room, do the rule with the again. So what if you want to say, and if I want to add in here, VBox was the instance of this, I will just add an item. We had a new item, it's called item 2, which is a text control. I hope it was text 2, right? So let me remember here. So we had a text control with text 2, it was not in the item box. And here we are just adding a new node. Please keep an eye again on this one. The toolbar, VBox will not be replaced. If it would be replaced, then the node will be collapsed by Chrome. And you will say it will not be replaced, and we will not touch anything here. we will only append it to the, as this API is appending, so you can see that only this one is appending. We didn't touch anything here. And we can now or remove this one. I mean, VBox, and we can remove the item, the second item. So this will be removed, and nothing will be touched here. Okay. So you can see that nothing is touched. So we don't try to re-render the items that are not necessary to be rendered. And this will give a lot of power with this rendering, and also it will give a lot of performance optimization. It will open a lot of door like conditional rendering dependencies. That it will add a lot of power into the framework. So one interesting thing would be very interesting. If you keep the controls in your string-based, and let me show you what is happening here. Now let's add the button here. Button 1. And remember that button 1 was not a string-based rendering. It will also be appended to the old, but the previous item was using version 2. We will still not touch the version 2 ones. Okay?
There's a typo.
Sure. Okay. So, and then we will just add this one to the, still add to the here. And the items previous are not touched. But if we now somehow re-render the control VBox, if you just re-render the VBox, you will see that this will still not, this DOM nodes will not be still not touched, but the button has to be replaced again because it's using string-based rendering. We cannot do an optimization for it. So let me just re-render the HBox, and please keep an eye here. This is what I mean with the collapsing, so you will also see how collapsing is happening in Chrome. VBox. That's just re-render. Doesn't mean it have to just. So you see it is just replaced, but the others, the previous items, are not touched. So if you keep your controls in string-based rendering, this is what will happen to your controls as well. Or you need to deal with the custom setters that will increase the size. Yeah. Okay. So we almost, time is up. So let me say thank you to you for joining. And if you have